So Justin, Michigan got a little bit of good news. Was certainly expecting this. This wasn't like big, shocking, breaking news. Josh Ross, linebacker, and Donovan Jeter, a defensive tackle, both announced that they will be back for their 5th year, not their 6th year, their 5th year that they are eligible for. So some good news for Michigan on that front, especially with the loss of Cam McGrone to the NFL. You know, they're going to need to lean on Josh Ross. Michael Barrett played the Viper position. Not really sure, you know, what that means for his future now that they've brought in 2 new defensive coordinators. But Michael Barrett is someone who's super versatile. You could see him, you know, if he's playing a traditional will, you know, if they need to get him up to a Mike, I think he could play Mike. God, you know, with his speed and his athleticism, you know, he could always play strong safety too. That's an option. For
you never know. Lance Dixon from Penn State, the linebacker, is in the portal, and he has a couple crystal balls to Michigan because he's a former West Bloomfield guy. So maybe he'll be joining that squad to strengthen the linebacker core.
That would certainly be good news. Michigan did pick up a commitment, a football commitment for this 2021 class, a defensive tackle. Just recently, George Rooks out of St. Peter's Prep in New Jersey. And they also picked up a transfer from Louisiana Tech, Willie Allen, who was announced many, many weeks ago, but now is official. So, you know, it looks like some of the early moves that Jim Harbaugh's made are helping, and we'll see. We'll certainly track the roster changes for this Michigan football team going forward. Justin, I do want to ask you about 2 players who have announced that they're going elsewhere. And Dylan McCaffrey, this occurred way back in September when he opted out for the season and said that he was going to transfer. News that no pat on the back here, but that we broke over at Wolverine Digest, the site that is now run by Brandon Brown. You know, and it was at the time, I don't know. I mean, certainly there were some mitigating factors there, but a guy who had a lot of promise, who was the 2nd highest rated quarterback recruit of the Jim Harbaugh era, prior to them signing J.J. McCarthy. It was Brandon Peters was the top ranked recruit that they ever signed at the quarterback position. Dylan McCaffrey was number 2. This is a guy who really early on in his career impressed at Notre Dame when he came in for an injured Shea Patterson on the road as a redshirt freshman. He then, you know, had a really nice game against Nebraska, where he threw a 56-yard touchdown pass. He also ran what was a 70-something yarder, but it got called back for holding. But just really looked like he was going to be the guy for Michigan football. All the intangible qualities, all the leadership qualities. Guys were excited to play with him, and it never came to fruition. And let me ask you, Justin, like, how much of a bummer is it for you? He's going to Northern Colorado, where his dad coaches, where he's going to play for his dad. Obviously, he'll probably be the starting quarterback there. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like cataclysmic, how disappointing, how much of a bummer, and how much do you think Michigan missed out on with no Dylan McCaffrey at starting quarterback?
Well, I think to me, it's when I was looking at the quarterback room at the end of, I believe, the 2019 season, it looked like Michigan's set for 5+ years, right? They've got Joe Milton, they've got Dylan McCaffrey, and that's going to be a great battle. One of them's got to pan out, right? And then JJ's coming in the future, and they can continue to build on that. And so for me, it's very disappointing because, you went from what I saw, and I think a lot of people saw, as a stacked quarterback room. And there's no way that they could miss on all those guys. And then they would be set up for the future when J.J. McCarthy comes in and, he can groom himself under one of those guys for a year or two and then step in. So I am super disappointed, honestly. It's probably an 8 for me because between Dylan McCaffrey and Joe Milton, I thought one of them was going to be the guy. And I was going into the 2020 season last summer thinking it's no doubt Dylan McCaffrey. No doubt. I was told by a lot of people that were in Schembechler in the spring practice and everything in 2020 that Dylan was by far the most talented quarterback. Even actually at the end of the 2019 season, a lot of people said even with Shea Patterson as the starting quarterback, Dylan McCaffrey was far out more talented than Shea Patterson. Shea had the leadership. Shea had a little bit of, veteran and those tangibles going on. But I think that Dylan McCaffrey showed the arm. He showed, the 6'5" frame, all that stuff. So it is super, super disappointing to me. And I can see him doing well. Honestly, I'm a little surprised he went FCS, even though his dad is the coach there. I'm surprised he didn't land somewhere in the Pac-12 or something like that. But I think his attitude had a lot to do with it. I think he is a little bit of a guy that thought he was better than he was and struggled with not being that guy. And so I don't know. I'm disappointed. Are you in the same boat, or are you saying we'll be okay without him?
Well, I'm certainly bummed. I'll be honest. Like, I loved what I saw out of Dylan McCaffrey in that 2018 season, and there was enough in that early part of the 2019 season. Just what a crazy couple of years where I agree with you that, the expectations for him. 2019, we spent the entire summer and at Big Ten coaches, Big Ten media days of that, where the coaches talked about playing both quarterbacks, that they had a role for Dylan McCaffrey. We saw it really early on in the 2019 season against Middle Tennessee State, where he came in and they ran, reverse with him. They did a couple of fun things, and that was supposed to be the plan. And then Michigan just abandoned it for no good reason, absolutely no good reason. They spent all this time putting it into the offense, and then they didn't use it, and they just kind of panicked. And then they put Dylan McCaffrey in a no-win situation when he goes into the third quarter of a game that they're losing 35-0 on the road at Wisconsin. And should he have been more careful with his body? Yeah, probably. He's a fearless guy who wants to get the extra yard, and he put himself in position, and then the guy, kind of had a nasty hit and bell rung and concussion, and now his future was completely altered because of that concussion and because of the injuries that he would have. But it's, to me, you don't know for sure, right? We don't know because, again, we had no access to practice and we had no access to see this competition. But it's very clear that Joe Milton wasn't the guy. Right. And we're not really sure if Cade McNamara, what his future is and what is J.J. McCarthy. But this is just another example of someone who's not panning out, who everybody put their eggs in that basket, who the coaches talked about, who they were excited about as a prospect, as someone who could both run the football, was such a natural on the read option, and was an extremely fast and quick runner, and someone who had all those kind of X factor qualities that you want to build a offense around, and then nothing. He's out of here. He's going someplace else.
Let me ask you this. Do you see that, and we'll talk about Zach Charbonnet in a second here as well, but I think that you can lump both of them into this category. Are these two guys more of guys that didn't pan out at Michigan, or were they not utilized in the right way, so they want to move on to get a better shot somewhere?
I think in this situation, Zach Charbonnet, I was just looking at his stats here, and Zach Charbonnet is going to be a head scratcher for Michigan fans for a while. Mm-hmm. He finishes his freshman year with 726 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns. The 11 touchdowns is a Michigan true freshman rushing record. The 726 yards, I think, ranked second all time behind Mike Hart. Then he comes out in his very first game, his very first carry against Minnesota. He goes for 70 yards on a touchdown, and he's showing off his speed and some vision that people are super excited about. And then the rest of the year after that Minnesota game, he gets the ball 15 total times. This to me is another example of this coaching staff just not having a clear idea of what they want to do at a certain position and wasting a guy away. And, last year when he was a true freshman, they didn't want to admit this, but this was 100% true. They put him in a situation this week 2 where they had trust in him. I get it, but they ran him 33 times against Army because they didn't trust anybody else to go in there and pass block. Mm-hmm. And they beat him into the ground so badly in his second career game at Michigan that the following week they were like, oh, well, we decided to rest him against Wisconsin, and instead played Ben Mason near the goal line when they have a 235-pound back in Charbonnet. Why? Not because they need to rest him, because he was hurt. Okay, so they have mismanaged Zach Charbonnet his entire career. And that to me is incredibly frustrating because you look at a lot of guys that they have had, a lot of really talented guys. Zach Charbonnet, until Donovan Edwards arrives, and I guess he's arriving right now. He's an early enrollee. He is the highest ranked running back that they have ever signed at Michigan. He was number 46 nationally. And here he is gone after, kind of a season and a half after 168 career carries. You want to go back and look at how they didn't get the most out of Nico Collins, how they didn't get the most out of Donovan Peoples-Jones, how they didn't get the most last year out of Hassan Haskins, how they didn't get the most out of any quarterback. And it's like this. It's Groundhog Day, Justin. It's repetitive over and over again. They have all this talent, Rashawn Gary, how they have all these physically talented players. Everybody talks about how they have to recruit better to be able to compete with Ohio State. No, they need to, but they have got to start utilizing the best ability of their talent when they have it, and they're not.
Yeah, I mean, these two guys, I think you can put right in the same category. I think that Zach Charbonnet is a little bit more of a head scratcher than Dylan McCaffrey, but it goes back to the point, of how they handled the running back room this past year. And I don't know why they can't figure out that they need to pick a guy and go with him, but it's also like, okay, I don't know. It is a head scratcher because in terms of Zach Charbonnet, that's what we wanted was, pick at least two guys, Hassan Haskins and Zach Charbonnet possibly, and go with them.